Both T-64 and T-72 carry their two-section 125mm ammunition, shell and full propellant charge, or missile and reduced propellant charge, in separate loading trays positioned on top of each other. But firstly, in T-64, 28 of these were arranged vertically as a ring under the turret ring proper, and were rotated to put the correct tray into position under the hoist system in the turret rear. This had the disadvantage of cutting the turret off from the rest of the tank, most notably, the driver. T-72 B-1V tanks of the Venezuelan Army during a parade in homage to former President Hugo Chavez March 2014. Accessing the hull required partial removal of the trays. The T-72 uses a design that has lower width requirements and does not isolate a turret compartment. The trays are arranged in a circle at the very bottom of the fighting compartment. The trade-off is the reduction of number of trays to 22. The second difference is that in the T-64 the trays were hinged together and were flipped open as they were brought into position, allowing both the shell forward/missile and propellant charge to be rammed into the breech in one motion. In the T-72 the tray is brought to the breech as is, with the shell in the lower slot and the charge in the upper one, and the mechanical rammer sequentially loads each of them, resulting in a longer reloading cycle. 80. The autoloader has a minimum cycle of 6.5 seconds, ATGM, 8 seconds, and a maximum cycle of 15 seconds for reload. In later versions the sequence mode allows to load in less than 5 seconds, allowing to reach 3 shots in 13 seconds. The autoloader system also includes an automated casing removal mechanism that ejects the propellant cassette through an opening port in the back of the turret during the following reload cycle. The autoloader disconnects the gun from the vertical stabilizer and cranks it up 3 degrees above the horizontal in order to depress the breech end of the gun and line it up with the loading tray and rammer. While loading, the gunner can still aim because he has a vertically independent sight. With a laser rangefinder and ballistic computer, final aiming takes at least another 3 to 5 seconds, but it is pipelined into the last steps of autoloading and proceeds concurrently. In addition to the 22 autoloaded rounds, the T-72 carries 1781 rounds conventionally in the hull, which can be loaded into the emptied autoloader trays or directly into the gun. The T-72B3 modernization replaced the old autoloader with a new one to fit longer projectiles such as 3BM59 and 3BM60. Previous variants are limited and may only carry older APFS rounds that can't exceed a certain length, therefore allowing less performance from anti-tank rounds. The way that the unused rounds are stored in the autoloader system has been exposed as a flaw, as observers have noted that penetrating hits can easily set off a chain reaction that detonates all of the munition. The result is the turret is blown off, resulting in a so-called jack-in-the-box explosion. This vulnerability was first observed during the Gulf War. 82. Operators and service. T-72 operators in blue with former operators in red. The T-72 was never used in the Afghanistan War. The 40th Soviet Army that was deployed there had mainly T-55 and T-62 tanks. 83. The Russian Federation had over 10,000 T-72 tanks in use, including around 2,000 in active service and 8,000 in reserve, mostly T-72Bs. The T-72 has been used by the Russian Army in the fighting during the First and Second Chechen Wars, the Russo-Armenian T-72B during the military parade in Yerevan. Ukrainian T-72 during training, 2018. Georgian War, and the Russo-Ukrainian War. The T-72 has been used by over 40 countries worldwide. Syria. In the 1982 Lebanon War, Syrian T-72s are believed to have engaged Israeli tanks, M60A1, Magak or probably Merkava tanks, in the south of Lebanon. 84. It is assumed that Syrian T-72 never met the Merkava in battle. 85. On the 9th of June, 1982, the Syrian General HQ ordered a brigade of the 1st Armored Division recently equipped with T-72 tanks to move straight ahead, cross the border, and hit the right flank of the Israeli units advancing along the eastern side of Bekaa Valley. The ensuing battle staved off further Israeli advance and 10 IDF main battle tanks were destroyed. After the war, Syrian President Hafez al-Assad called it the best tank in the world. 86. The T-72 has been in extensive use in the Syrian civil war by the Syrian Arab Army since 2011. Quite a few captured units have been used by anti-government forces, including the rebel Free Syrian Army, and jihadist groups such as the Islamic Front and the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. Initially, the insurgent forces used IEDs and RPG-7 ambush tactics against the government armored forces. Later, the rebels obtained modern Russian RPGs and Yugoslav M79s, which were used successfully against T-72s. 87. Starting in 2012, the capture from Syrian stocks and later direct delivery by external sponsors of modern anti-tank guided missiles, including Chinese-made HJ-8, Soviet-made 9K111 Faggot, 9M113 Konkurs, and 9K115 Metis, and U.S-made BGM-71 tow missile enabled the opposition forces to engage and destroy any government armored vehicle types, T-72 included, from safer distances. 88. As of March 2020, at least 837 T-72 tanks operated by the Syrian armed forces were destroyed according to visual recordings. 89. Iraq. Iraqi T-72MS and T-72M1S had success in the battle for Basra and the last stages of the war. 105mm M68 tank guns and tow missiles proved ineffective against the frontal armor of Iraqi T-72s. 90. 91. 60 T-72 tanks were lost during the 8 years of war. 92. 93. Ra'ad al-Hamdani, an Iraqi general in the Iraqi Republican Guard, stating the 16th Iranian Armored Division, which was equipped with chieftain tanks, lost a battle against the 10th Iraqi Armored Brigade with T-72 tanks. It is hard for an armor brigade to destroy a division in 12 hours, but it happened. It was a disaster for the Iranians. 94. Out of the 894 chieftain tanks that had started the war, only 200 were left by the war's end. 95. According to Iranians and Iraqis, the T-72 was the most feared tank of the Iran-Iraq war. 96. During the invasion of Kuwait, Iraq used 690 tanks, mainly T-55s, T-62s and T-72s. 97. Kuwait had 281 tanks, including 6 T-72s, 165 chieftains, 70 vicars and 40 centurions. 98. On the morning of 2 August near the Mutla Pass, a tank battle took place between the vicars tanks of the 6th Kuwaiti Mechanized Brigade and the T-72s of the Republican Guard's 17th Armored Brigade, 1st Hammurabi Armored Division. Kuwaiti tanks were able to knock out one T-72 during the ambush, but were defeated in response with the commander of the 6th Brigade captured. 99. Only 20 surviving Vickers tanks were able to retreat to Saudi Arabia. The Iraqi assembled T-72 version Lion of Babylon engaged coalition forces in both Iraq wars. The Battle of 73 Easting took place during a sunstorm in the Iraqi desert. US M101s and Bradley fighting vehicles came up against Iraqi Republican Guard T-72MS and BMPs and inflicted 37 losses on the Iraqi armored forces, while losing a single Bradley to enemy fire. 100. The The primary attack was conducted by two ACS-3 squadrons of about 400 soldiers, along with the 1st Infantry Division's two leading brigades, attacked and destroyed the Iraqi 18th Mechanized Brigade and 37th Armored Brigade of the Tawakalna Division, each consisting of between 2,500 and 3,000 personnel. 101. The Iraqi T-72 MS used 3 BM-9 shells, removed from Soviet service in 1973, 102, 103, 104, 105, with a penetration of 245 mm at a distance of up to 2,500 meters, 8,200 feet. 106. M61s of the 1st Marine Division Task Force Ripper led the drive to the Kuwait International Airport on the 27th of February, 1991. Task Force Ripper's M61 tanks destroyed about 100 Iraqi tanks and armored personnel carriers, including T-72 tanks. 107. The total number of T-72s lost during Operation Desert Storm was approximately 150. 108. As of 1996, Iraq had 776 T-72 tanks in service from 1,038 originally received. 109. Chechen Wars. During the First Chechen War, December 1994 to September 1996, fought between the Russian Federation and the self-proclaimed Chechen Republic of Ichkeria, led by Djokhar Dudayev. The Russian Federation deployed both T-72 and T-80 tanks. Russian AFV losses during the first 3 months fighting amounted to 62 tank, T-72 /T-80 losses. 44 T-72s of 141, 18 T-80s of 71 and 0 PT-76s of 9. Analysis of damage to non-repairable vehicles showed that no T-72 were lost to frontal penetration of the hull from man-portable anti-tank weapons. 110. Analysis of the causes of these losses indicated the majority were caused by Chechen 4-man anti-armor hunter-killer teams consisting of a gunner armed with a Russian RPG-7 or RPG-18 shoulder-fired anti-tank rocket launcher, and a machine gunner and a sniper. 110. With 5 or 6 such teams simultaneously attacking a single armored vehicle. The majority of losses recorded occurred from 3 to 6 kill-shot hits to the sides, top and rear of a vehicle. Highlighted were serious tactical deployment failures, once again demonstrating doctrine and tactics being a primary factor in determining a tank's worth. Following the serious losses to the Russian Federation during the first assault upon Grozny, armored tactics were revised. Russian armored vehicle losses dropped off with their change in tactics to have Russian infantry move in front, with armored combat vehicles in support of the infantry. In particular use of AAA armored vehicles, these vehicles can elevate their main armament to higher angles than the T-72. The Russian army captured 7 of Dudayev's T-72s and used them in combat. During the First Chechen War, at least 2 tank duels took place. In the first, Dudayev's T-72 knocked out 1 T-62M belonging to pro-Russian Chechens. In the second, one of Dudayev's T-72s was destroyed by a Russian T-72B. 3 Russian T-72s are recorded as destroyed, at the hands of Chechen separatists, including 1 tank during the Second Chechen War, during the period 1997 to 2003. 111, 112, 113, 114, 115, Russo-Georgian War. Georgian Army T-72 Sim-1. During the war in South Ossetia in 2008, both sides deployed great numbers of T-72 tanks. At the time of the conflict, the Georgian military fielded 191 T-72 tanks, of which 120 were modified to T-72 Sim-1s. The Georgian army deployed a total of 75 of its T-72 tanks into South Ossetia. 116. The Georgian military lost 30 T-72s-10 in combat during the fighting around Skhin Valley, 117, and another 20 destroyed by Russian paratroopers after their capture. 118. Russo-Ukrainian War. War in Donbas. On the 26th of August, 2014, the International Institute for Strategic Studies claimed that it had identified a mixed Russian column composed of at least 3 T-72Bs and a lone T-72B3 in the war in Donbas. The significance of this sighting was that Russia attempted to maintain plausible deniability over the issue of supplying tanks and other arms to the separatists. Russia continuously claimed that any tanks operated by the separatists must have been captured from Ukraine's own army. The T-72B3 is in service with the Russian army in large numbers. This modernized T-72 is not known to have been exported to nor operated by any other country. 119. In an interview with Dori Batomunk in March 2015, it was revealed that he had operated a T-72B as part of a 32-tank Russian army unit when fighting for Debaltseve in Ukraine in February 2015. His tank was destroyed and he suffered severe burns. 120. Before the conflict, Ukraine had 600 T-72s in storage. 121. However, encountering a deficiency of serviceable armored vehicles, the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense began returning some of the T-72s to service. 122. Russian invasion of Ukraine. Examples of abandoned Russian T-72B3 mod. 2016, Top, and T-72B mod. 1989, Bottom, tanks with various different makeshift steel grills variants attached to the turret, during the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. The T-72 has seen extensive service in the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine with both sides. 123. Russia's most numerous tanks are the T-72B3, mod 2011 and 2016, and the older T-72B, mod 1985 and 1989. 124. In the build-up to the invasion, Russian forces applied improvised steel grills to the top of the turret, known as cope cages by some commentators. 125, 126, 127, 128, including British Defence Secretary Ben Wallace. 129. Military analysts have speculated that such grills were added in an attempt to counter the usage of top attack weapons, such as the US-made FGM-148 Javelin and British-Swedish NOR, by Ukrainian forces. 130, 131, 132, 133. These implementations add weight to the tank, increase its visual profile, and make it more difficult for the crew to escape from the tank. 134. Analysts have also speculated that they may be potentially used as a countermeasure against RPG-7s fired from above during urban combat, loitering munitions, or against drone attacks, as a response to lessons learned from the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh War. 135, 136. The lack of uniformity between the makeshift cage variants made from different meshes and iron fences suggest that they are largely improvised by the tank crews, and are not standard issue. 137. In May 2022, some Russian tankers said they eventually removed the cages, as they obstructed the use of machine guns and radios, and prevented evacuation if the tank caught fire. 138. Before the invasion, Ukraine operated small numbers of T-72s which were left from the Soviet Union but were partly modernized. These mainly included T-72s and T-72 AVS.